Hello and welcome to this video. I am so glad you're here. I decided I needed to show my face and make a video because one, it's one of the easiest ways to edit a video like this. You know, like doing the whole like pictures and then voiceover and the music and all of that can get really time consuming to edit. And so I figured I'm just gonna go back to basics and do what I have done since the beginning of YouTube, which is set up a camera and say what I need to say. So, oh, hello kitty. Just trying to step all over my laptop. So recently a book about cryptic pregnancy has come out, and I don't want to specifically mention the name of the book or the writer, the author who wrote this book, just because the information included is very dangerous, highly misleading, and intentionally deceiving. So if I can save someone from stumbling across this information by not mentioning the specifics about this book's title and the author, I'm obviously going to do that. I'm not going to advertise something that's so malicious. The writer of this self-centered book mentions Parthenogenesis, which the author of this book calls self-conceiving or self-conception. Parthenogenesis is a natural form of asexual reproduction in which growth and development of embryos occur in a gamete without combining with another gamete. In animals, parthenogenesis means development of an embryo from an unfertilized egg cell. That is what the writer from this shameful book calls self-conceiving or self-conception. In the wild, most females that resort in it's an intense word, parthenogenesis, do so only when it's strictly necessary, typically but not limited to when a species of females become isolated from males. So this isn't something that's like just done because it's, you know, fun. It's something that's done when it's absolutely necessary, when the you know, continuation of that species is literally dependent on the woman reproducing without a male because there's no males available to reproduce with. And if she doesn't do so, then that species will cease to exist. So it's not something that's just done for the fun of it or because it's neat. It's something that's done when it's absolutely necessary. I don't know how to keep this light on. You know, it's charged. It just turns off. Anyways, and I'm really going to try to keep this video as short as possible, but it is probably going to run a little bit long because I have so much information to include. Okay, so conceiving a son using parthenogenesis is highly unlikely as compared to a daughter. The reason behind this is the absence of the Y chromosomes in females. The mother cannot transmit the Y chromosomes essential to form a male offspring. Thus, if a human were to reproduce by parthenogenesis, the resulting offspring would only be a daughter. So the benefits to the species using parthenogenesis is numerous offspring can be produced without costing the parent a great amount of energy or time. The disadvantage of this type of reproduction is the lack of genetic variation, and this is very, very important. Having genetic variation in your species is extremely important. There is no movement of genes from one population to another, and it's not compatible for life. So since environments are unstable, populations that are genetically variable are able to adapt to changing conditions better than those that lack genetic variation. So a species that chooses to do this over and over and over and over again will start to lose the ability to adapt to its surroundings, and that is detrimental to a species. So there is clearly still a lot to be discovered about parthenogenesis, but there are plenty of great minds on the case, as scientists and doctors are still currently studying this phenomenon in nature and in occurrences in humans. This is still something that they are currently studying or researching in humans. We'll discuss an extraordinary and intricate case of parthenogenic chimera at a chimera event, resulting in a viable male baby named FD towards the end of this video. So stay tuned. Fix my light. Man, it takes so much to get back into the swing of things after you haven't like recorded videos or done YouTube for as long as I haven't. I have put out, you know, recent videos, but they have not, I haven't been sitting in front of the camera. I've just like done the whole picture and voiceover thing. So it's different getting back in front of the camera. Please be careful, sissy. Okay, so our genetic program as humans is set for an elegant, complex, and finely orchestrated development from a zygote to a functional adult body capable of sexual reproduction. Human reproduction is sexual reproduction, which involves a complex life cycle in which a gamete, which is such as a sperm and an egg cell, with a single set of chromosomes combines with another gamete to produce a zygote that develops into an organism composed of cells with two sets of chromosomes, a diploid. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's distracting back there, but there's really no other. I have a toddler and an infant, and so so sexual reproduction is the most common life cycle in animals, fungi, and plants, and this includes humans. So let's dive into a paragraph from this Cryptic pregnancy book. Oh man, they are so silly. So, okay, let's get into this book. So, quote unquote, but if the consciousness within a woman is that of a true being, she has more chance of self-conception, and the powers that be, the Illuminati, the elite, whatever you want to call them, must try and hide this. My whole point here is no one is trying to hide anything. This is proven using a story and a case study in 1950s Britain. The writer themselves includes the story in their Cryptic pregnancy book, and they talk about it on their TikTok. They make TikToks about it. So let's re-examine this case study in detail and talk about some theories. We'll study it, and then we will talk about what could have happened to explain how this even came about. So in July 1956, a woman in Britain called Emery Jones claimed that her 11-year-old daughter Monica was unfathered and conceived without a man. Mrs. Jones claimed that she had been a virgin at the time of the alleged conception and moreover bedridden with rheumatism in a German hospital staffed only by women. After leaving the hospital in the summer of 1944, she had gone to the doctor feeling lethargic and hoping to be prescribed a tonic, only to be told that she was 3 months pregnant. Between November of 1955 and June of 1956, Mrs. Jones and her daughter Monica, then 10 years old, readily submitted to a series of experiments devised by a team of specialists assembled by the newspaper and led by Dr. Stanley Balfour Lynn of Guy's and Queen Charlotte's Hospital in London. The aim was to establish whether a father had played any part in Monica's birth. Hold on. Something tells me that I'm going to watch this video in the future just to watch the two of them playing. Okay. So the test confirms that mother and daughter had identical blood, saliva, and sense of taste. Sorry, I keep looking down here because the light's there. The camera's up here. Sorry. So they had those three things in common, all apparently consistent with the case of a virgin birth. So far, so good. But one final test, if successful, would prove that the daughter of Emery was conceived without a man. So Spurway proposed grafting a piece of Monica's skin onto Emery's and grafting a piece of Emery's skin onto Monica's. The reasoning was that if Monica possessed only Emery's genes, then Emery's immune system should accept Monica's skin, much like a skin graft between identical twins. So Emery's graft from Monica fell off after 4 weeks, And Monica's graft from Emery fell off after only 6 weeks. So the skin graft test failed. An article in The Lancet about the case, written by one Dr. Stanley Balfour Lynn, concluded that the pair's genes did not match perfectly since the skin grafts failed. Dr. Balfour Lynn still felt that the evidence of blood tests, along with the testimony of Mrs. Jones, were still so persuasive that he felt able to declare, "We have been unable to prove that any man took part in the creation of this child." It was good enough for the Sunday Pictorial, which ran the piece under the banner, "My baby born without a man." Alongside was a photograph of a mother and daughter looking strikingly similar, with their gap-tooth smiles. The story was a phenomenon, doubling the paper's circulation to 6 million and making headlines around the globe. It's the story the whole world is talking about, the Melbourne Argus trumpeted. Readers were drip-fed every detail of the 6-month medical investigation under the subheadings, "The tests, 4 left, relief." They had to wait a whole week for the mother's own story. Emery's illness, pregnancy, and Monica's birth. Another front-page world exclusive. Be careful, please. Even disagreements among scholars and the medical journal, The Lancet, could not derail the story. Any doubts in the public mind about this can now be dispelled, the Daily Mirror promised. Independent doctors had said so. So, I think this is a case of a doctor wanting to be right, so much so that they declare a debatable story as truth without all the supporting evidence pointing to it being the unequivocal truth. And a newspaper so eager to make money. Hey, be careful. A newspaper so eager to make money in headlines that it's not a problem that the truth and their professional integrity were being compromised. The skin grafts didn't take. Obviously, they were not 100%. They weren't. Anyways, sorry. Let's get to the points. There's red flags that this case is not exactly what it seems, and we'll go over them as follows. This was well before DNA testing was available and highly accurate in results, meaning the newspaper Sunday Pictorial headline, "My baby born without a man," was misleading at best and malicious at its worst. The tests, research, and medical study were funded and provided by the newspaper. This supposed medical case was used for controversy so the paper could sell more and make more money. I mean, it was just you. I mean, it's pretty you read the story and it's pretty evident. Otherwise, the skin grafts would have taken. And be careful with Dithie. Yeah. Otherwise, the skin grafts would have taken, and because they would have been an identical DNA match, but they weren't. It was printed in 2 parts, so the readers were left to wait an entire week for the second part of the story. It was built up like a sitcom to make sales and profit, not for the actual reveal of a new rare medical and scientific phenomenon. Instead, it was printed for shock value, for entertainment, and for profit. Emery states that she was bedridden with rheumatism in the German hospital, staffed only by women. This could have been easily verified. Why? Why did you get yourself stuck back there? 1 second. So Emery's stay in this German hospital could have easily been verified. But no attempt was ever made to corroborate Emery's story. So they don't say that what if Emery wasn't hospitalized for rheumatism, but instead emotional stress, anxiety, depression, and or a mental breakdown? With the stigma surrounding mental illness in this time period, and even now, I can easily see a woman lying about a hospital stay for that very reason, and instead twisting, it to seem as if she was physically ill and not mentally ill. Or was Monica's birth, Emery's pregnancy, a result of a drug-induced rape by medical staff during her hospital stay? Or could it have been an unwanted sexual encounter from a family friend or family member that she disassociated from in order to protect herself from the trauma? Was it investigated in Emery's case that women can get pregnant without having actual sexual intercourse? While semen should be as close to the cervix as possible to get pregnant, as it would be, with vaginal intercourse, you can conceive as long as semen gets anywhere near the vagina or vaginal opening. What was this ever considered by Dr. Balford Lynn? And how convincing could Emery's testimony have been, leaving out all these details? Or was this doctor so eager to make a name for himself in the medical world with such an amazing discovery that he was willing to compromise his own integrity to be the first to say that parthenogenesis does occur in human females, even if it wasn't 100% accurate? Could he have actually thought it was accurate, knowing that the skin grafts didn't take? What was the point of performing such a test if the results weren't considered or left out of the conclusion altogether? So the Daily Mirror promised independent doctors said the following, that any doubts in the public mind can now be dispelled. But who are these independent doctors, and why weren't their names included in that? And so that they could be contacted to interview about how they came to the conclusion that the findings were justified in determining indefinitely that these results cannot be dispelled, especially after the skin grafts didn't take for the mother or for the daughter, proving that the pair's genes did not match perfectly. So do these independent doctors even exist? How could we even ever verify this? The fact is we can't. So that's extremely suspect. We just have to take their word for it because they said so. They have personal gain from this lie, and we just have to believe it. I think not. It just makes no sense to say that, they didn't have any personal gain, because they did. The whereabouts of Emery and Monica after their moment in the spotlight remain unknown. So Emery said she was going to go to Germany for a little while after being interviewed and proceeded to disappear from the face of the earth. Audrey Whiting, the reporter for the Sunday Pictorial, wrote Emery several times to the German address she gave, and Emery never replied anything in response. Emery's death was reported in 1983. As for Monica, the daughter, she just disappears completely. Taking all of this into account, it is not hard to come to the conclusion that at the heart of the story was some kind of abuse. Perhaps in that return trip to Germany, visiting family, some new revelation came to light which demolished the Virgin Mother narrative and made Miss Jones determined to hide from any further publicity. This just shows that they couldn't keep up the charade permanently.
Hey.
Why are you naked? Okay, so I want to talk about some ongoing research about parthenogenesis, and it is possible that some cases of human parthenogenesis involve self-fertilization rather than true virgin birth. Scientists have found that with a little bit of help, stem cells from a female donor can be induced to grow into sperm cells, something that would never normally occur, so it might be possible to create a child from two mothers, each of whom contributed half of the genetic material. Of course, it's not quite that simple, as Dr. Alan Pacey, a reproductive specialist at the University of Sheffield, explains. So they say that we can make something that looks like a sperm cell down a microscope, but whether it is programmed genetically in the same way is really difficult to establish. I don't know if there's a way to check that except to use the sperm and see if the babies develop normally. You can do that in rats and mice, but it's a big step potentially to do that in a human. So all female reproduction has the same theme of feminist science fiction throughout the 20th century, and lesbian separatist groups in the 1970s and 1980s followed parthenogenesis research closely, optimistic for its potential as a new reproductive technology. So this is something that's been followed all throughout history. It's been something that's been followed in the 18th century, 17th century. The ability for a woman and another woman to replicate became really big in the 1970s. And by the 70s, spontaneous viable mammalian parthenogenesis seemed improbable. And Pickus' results had not been replicated for 30 years. His rabbits were considered an exception to the general observation that mammalian eggs would begin to develop parthenogenically, but they never made it very far. After a certain stage, development consistently became delayed and disorganized, and eventually mammalian parthenotes turned into tumors or were spontaneously aborted. So that's what 1970s research concluded. One second. Okay, I just checked on her. She's not crying. She is talking. She's going, ah! Sounds like crying, but it's not crying. So, see, she's talking to her sister. Oops. I went down too far. Oh, I hate when this happens. What, baby? What happened? You can't come in here because you don't want to put a shirt on. If you put a shirt on, you can come in here. What happened? You got ouchie? One second. Okay. So in that Cryptic Pregnancy book, I'm going to read you a paragraph from it. It says, quote, unquote, remember only true beings or real humans were created by the one true God, so only they have this ability to create. Fake humans or demons were created by the demiurge, as shown in all ancient texts and in the book of Genesis. Then the writer goes on to say, now there are no absolutes in this dimension, so the demiurge may allow some of his fake human women to self-conceive or have a cryptic pregnancy to add confusion, as there is always an exception to a rule. But I have read books and articles by women who know self-conception still occurs today, but being of a demonic nature, try crazy stupid things to try and self-conceive themselves. From squatting over herbs to strange sexual practices, please understand that self-conception has nothing to do with sex, so even if you were having sex with your partner at the time of your cryptic pregnancy conception, he is not the biological father. Your own body enabled conception, and I will prove this scientifically, not just metaphysically. So these are my thoughts to the writer about this information. So if only real humans who were created by the one true God can create, but then also Satan or the demiurge may also allow some of his fake human women to self-conceive, this is a huge contradiction. It's one or the other. Satan, or the demiurge, as you call it, doesn't have the ability to create, only manipulate what's already been created. So without God's permission, Satan is not able to do anything. I'm sure you weren't aware. Hold on, my daughter's calling me. Okay, I'm sure you, the writer, weren't aware of how inconsistent your ideas and thoughts are. But this incriminating book reveals it all, and I'm going to dive into all of it. Not in this video, but in the videos to come. This one's just specifically about what the writer or the author of the book calls self-conceiving, which is parthenogenesis. So yeah, so is it God responsible for this pregnancy or not? The writer says that women in cryptic pregnancies self-conceive, but also says that God is responsible for giving them this ability. Self-conception removes God. Why would God take himself out of the equation? Why would God give his job to any woman? If any woman could decide to become pregnant at any moment without sperm, how is this a blessing from God? He had nothing to do with her decision in that moment. It was her free will that made that decision. It was her decision alone that made the pregnancy possible, not God's. Why would God give that ability to a woman to do so? It removes him out of the equation altogether. In my opinion, it makes no sense to do so. In the Cryptic Pregnancy book, it states, people talk about the God gene. I'm sure the God gene in cryptic pregnancy women who self-conceive are directly related. So here's some of my thoughts to the writer, and maybe even your thoughts too. So is a cryptic pregnancy woman God, or is God letting a cryptic pregnancy woman self-conceive? Isn't a woman who can self-conceive because she is closer to God or spiritually a real human, so then God theoretically rewards her with the ability to conceive a child or children without a man on her own terms? Isn't this a contradiction? This again is giving God's job away. God doesn't need to give his job to anyone else. God's way is perfect. He is all-knowing, all-powerful, and perfect in his timing, his plan, and his love. God's word is flawless, and he shields all that take refuge in him. So every child is a blessing from God. This is what we're told in the Bible over and over and over again. It's not something that's hidden. It's definitely something that's talked about. Every child is a blessing from God. Self-conception removes that blessing. So if a woman just decides that she's going to make herself pregnant, it's not God giving her that baby. Self-conception removes that blessing. The illogical idea of self-conception removes the need to follow God's plan in fertility, because the woman makes her own plan in becoming pregnant on her own terms and by her own thoughts, and then makes it so. So God doesn't give people the ability to become pregnant on their own terms. It is God's job to give life. So in Job 12:10, in his hands is the life of every living thing and the breath of all mankind. It doesn't say in the hand of cryptic pregnancy women. In Psalms 139:13 through 16, for you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. Sorry. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were you written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. The scripture says nothing of a woman or a cryptic pregnancy woman being responsible for the works of female production. In fact, it specifically and unequivocally states, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. You, as in God, not my mother, knitted me together in her womb. Is this making sense? Psalm 127:3 through 5. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. Again, children are a reward from God. It says nothing of God rewarding women to be able to practice self-conception. Again, self-conception removes God from the equation completely, making woman herself God. If a woman is able to create life by her own accord with her own body, then technically she is God. God does not give his ability to create life to humans. Only God can create. And he doesn't give women the ability to create life on her own accord by her own terms. So then you wonder, as I wondered, and I've researched many times, so this gave me an opportunity to reveal this research. Was Jesus self-conceived by Mary? How was Jesus placed in Mary's womb? How did all of that go down? Was it her DNA was it half of her DNA that was Jesus? Was Jesus self-conceived by Mary? The simple answer is no. There are several theories, 2 theories to be exact, for how Jesus was placed in the womb of Mary and during her virgin pregnancy and birth. I don't want to, this is kind of getting really long, but let's see. It says Matthew 1:25 echoes the truth that Mary was a virgin while she was pregnant. The verse says that Joseph kept her a virgin until she gave birth. The literal Greek for the phrase kept her a virgin is to not know her. So that is, he did not have sexual intercourse with her. Matthew 1:20 tells us that Mary conceived the child by Holy Spirit. The angel answered and said to her, the Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And for that reason, the Holy Child shall be called the Son of God. So now what does this mean? The simple answer is that only God ultimately knows how the Holy Spirit caused Mary to become pregnant and to give birth to Jesus Christ. Therefore, we can only speculate about what happened inside her womb. Recent biological studies reveal the mother's mitochondrial DNA is absolutely essential for a child to have life, but it's not true of the father's mitochondrial DNA, and so it is not essential for a child to have life. So did the Holy Spirit cause Mary's egg to begin the creative process? Her mitochondrial DNA could have been all that Jesus needed. This would be consistent with the prophecy Genesis 3:15, which refers to her seed. Also Galatians 3:16, which states that the seed in Genesis 22:12-18 refers to Jesus Christ. This would strongly suggest that Jesus did have Mary's DNA, but it's not absolute. We don't have that information. We can only speculate on how it might have happened, because Scripture is silent on the details of these things. So was Mary Jesus' surrogate mother? Was Christ's body created by God in Mary's womb without her DNA? And we have Hebrews 10:5, John 1-14, Psalm 8-5, Hebrews 2-9, to kind of support that God created Jesus outside of Mary's womb, not using her DNA, and then placed Jesus into her womb. But the correct answer, we just don't have any concrete evidence to really land on a yes or a no. From my research, I would say neither of these things are what happened as far as my opinion. Mary was more likely the surrogate mother than Jesus having Mary's DNA. If you want to know the answer, you're never going to get the exact answer. And so it's best to follow Paul's advice in 2 Timothy 2:23, but refuse foolish and ignorant speculations, knowing that they produce quarrels, because we're never going to know. The point is that believers are not to argue about the speculative point. It's just, I want to go over another thing that the international research team has shown, that parthenogenesis, a form of asexual reproduction, negatively affects the genome evolution of the animals that practice it. So, differences are lost in the two genome copies. They become similar, and this reduces variability, which can be important for species to adapt to their environment. Therefore, it can be concluded that Jesus was not the result of reproduction by parthenogenesis alone. Jesus, being the Son of God, or God in the flesh, his physical body would have been unadulterated and his genes pure. So parthenogenesis would have possibly limited his gene variability, which would have made Jesus, if he did come from Mary's DNA, it would have made him technically imperfect. My theory is that he wasn't a product of parthenogenesis because Christ was perfect. He was unadulterated, and his genetics were pure. It has been documented that spontaneous parthenogenic and androgenic events occur in humans, but they result in tumors and the ovarian teratoma and the hydroform mole, respectively. So we're going to jump back into that Cryptic Pregnancy book, and I'm going to read you another paragraph. Oh, yeah, say hi. We're going to talk about the Cryptic Pregnancy book. It says, quote unquote, if you, a cryptic pregnancy woman, have been told by your doctor that you need a fibroid, dermoid cyst, or non-cancerous tumor removed from your uterus, it may well be a live, healthy cryptic pregnancy baby, so be very careful. Now, we don't know that in every case a fibroid or dermoid cyst is actually a live, healthy, cryptic pregnancy baby, but we do know that doctors have been known to lie and cover up a lot about cryptic pregnancies.
Okay.
Hold on. Another absurd contradiction: speculation and unsolicited medical advice. This is the writer's opinion, and the writer has absolutely no medical evidence to support such claims. The writer has absolutely no medical training or education. Also, there's no definitive way for the reader to distinguish what is happening to them specifically. There is no definitive way for the reader to avoid developing a more serious condition or illness if they take the writer's ill advice and refuse to listen to their doctor in having the growth removed, and instead they keep the growth for an unlimited amount of time in the hopes that it will turn into a real living baby. It's complete and utter nonsense, and so very dangerous. The writer should be ashamed for advising women to not be proactive with their personal health when it comes to listening to doctors' diagnosis and treatment of growths or tumors in or around their reproductive organs. This cryptic pregnancy book also goes on to state, so when they tell you that you are not pregnant, but you have a large cyst or fibroid or a non-cancerous tumor in your uterus or on your fallopian tube, how could anything actually grow on a fallopian tube? Where would the blood supply come from? Wouldn't the tube burst? Are they really telling the truth? Or are they lying to your face? A doctor cannot tell someone they have for sure a non-cancerous tumor before the tumor is removed. They can tell someone that it's most likely benign or non-cancerous, but they can't tell them for sure that it is non-cancerous until they actually get it removed and send it to lab for biopsy. And then they run tests on it to see if it's cancerous or not. Until then, it's just speculation. It's just the doctor's best educated guess on whether or not they think it is. And then that's why they advise people to have growths removed, because they could be cancerous. So advising someone, advising someone to not have a growth removed is not only dangerous, but stupid. The growth could easily be cancer, and you, the writer, are advising women to potentially keep cancer inside their body in hopes that it turns into a real living baby. This is absolutely disgusting. And then to answer your questions, how can something grow on a fallopian tube? Are you that dense? Have you ever heard of an ectopic pregnancy? Where would the blood supply come from? There are veins and blood circulation in the fallopian tubes. I don't know where you think, how do you think that a fallopian tube stays alive inside of the human? Without blood supply, it would die. So of course, fallopian tubes have blood supply. Wouldn't the tube burst? Yes. Once the growth, whether it be a baby, an ectopic pregnancy, or a fibroid, or a cyst, the tube will eventually get, the growth will eventually get big enough that it bursts through the fallopian tube, destroying it. This is the exact reason an ectopic pregnancy is so dangerous. The pregnancy is lost, and the mother can potentially have internal bleeding, leading to a more serious complications. So tumors, dermoid cysts, and teratomas also happen in men. So would you advise a man to keep his tumor in his body with the hopes that it will turn into a living, breathing baby? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, no, you wouldn't do that. So the writer writes in this cryptic pregnancy book, quote unquote, "We know from my findings that cryptic pregnancy women have often conceived by parthenogenesis, and it is my belief that the spiritual ontology of a woman is the reason for this. True beings have more of a chance to conceive in this way because their spirit was created by the Absolute, so they have the divine energy to do so. There are very few true beings left on the planet, so obviously parthenogenesis is quite rare. Live, healthy fetuses are often mistaken for dermoid cysts or fibroids because cryptic pregnancy women I have spoken to have sadly lost their cryptic pregnancy baby in this horrifying way." There's so many lies. Live healthy fetuses are not mistaken for ademoid cysts or fibroids. This is complete and utter nonsense. Doctors are not in the business of taking living babies from mothers. They're not in that. I don't know where this idea or horrible myth rumor started. A fibroid doesn't have a heartbeat. How would doctors ever find any new diseases or illnesses if they weren't considering everything? Diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune disorders and lupus and HPV and Lyme disease. These diseases would have never been identified or have become a diagnosis if doctors and scientists alike weren't continuously researching and looking for anomalies, strange cases, and investigating further into the human body. The Cryptic Pregnancy book states, quote unquote, "I'm not saying some women are elite compared to others because they possess the ability to self-conceive. They are just different. However, this is exactly what you're stating, that women who have the ability to self-conceive are female true beings or real humans, while the women who cannot self-conceive are fake humans or demons. Writing, quote unquote, women who can't self-conceive normally conceive in the animal or sexual way. This statement proves the writer views those she calls fake humans or demons, which is basically people who don't agree with her theory of cryptic pregnancy. She views these people as lesser than or not as worthy." So let's discuss the extraordinary and intricate case of a parthogenic chimera event resulting in the viable male baby named FD. I talked about it in the beginning of this video, and now we are going to cover it. Spontaneous parthogenic activation of the female egg is not rare, but eventually results in ovarian teratoma, a benign tumor reported at least since the 19th century. These parthogenic events may present differently, resulting in an anatomically disorganized structure with fat tissue, hair, and teeth. Surprisingly, some teratomas may achieve such a high order of organization that the basic human body is present, although not functional. Let's say that again. Although not functional. Although there may seem that a human body is trying to grow, it does not mean that it is a functional body with imperfect head, limbs, and other structures, but is not compatible with life. Again, not compatible with life. In 1995, Strain and colleagues reported a case of a parthogenic event resulting in a viable male baby named FD. By studying FD's tissue samples, the group concluded that he is a parthenogenetic chimera, a child with two cell lineages in his body. The first one is derived from a normal fertilization, a haploid sperm and a haploid egg cell combined together to create a baby. And the second one is a parthenogenic and a spontaneous activated oocyte, which duplicated its genetic material. The parthenogenic cell fused to the normal embryo, resulting in the chimera composed of cells derived from different embryos, and used it as a healthy biological host on which it proliferated and established. This parthenogenic cell line occupied at least one biological niche in the host fetus, the blood tissue. Although many or most of FD's tissues are of biparental origin, his blood cells are of parthenogenic one. So this child was not the product of a parthenogenic pregnancy alone, meaning a normal embryo developed from fertilization from sexual intercourse and a spontaneously activated egg cell fused to the normal embryo like a parasite. If the spontaneously activated egg cell that duplicated its genetic material hadn't fused to the normal embryo, baby FD would have been born without this parthenogenic cell line, and his blood cells would have been of biparental origin, meaning he would have just been a normal baby if it latched onto him like a parasite and grew within him. So the idea, ideal way of human reproduction is sexual reproduction, which involves a complex life cycle in which a gamete, such as a sperm or egg cell with a single set of chromosomes, combines with another gamete to produce a zygote that develops into an organism composed of cells with 2 sets of chromosomes, a diploid. So fertilization beyond this definition is a mutation. An embryo, a fetus, a baby that is produced of parthenogenesis is genetically imperfect and incapable of human reproduction. So just as inbreeding reduces genetic diversity of a population, self-fertilization can reduce the genetic diversity of your offspring. If you choose to reproduce entirely on your own, your child would only have one parent, and thus half the genetic diversity available to a normal child. Each subsequent generation of single-parent reproduction would continue that trend, with the increasing risk that normally hidden defects would surface. In this manner, your offspring would suffer a collapse in genetic diversity. So, theoretically speaking, if these cryptic pregnancy women truly were self-conceiving these very special, genetically imperfect offspring, they would only be girls and unable to reproduce besides self-fertilization. So we just discussed it, self-fertilization can reduce the genetic diversity of a population and of the person's offspring, which is not good. And so, theoretically, if God were to give these women this ability, it would theoretically end that generation, because they wouldn't be able to repopulate in a way that would make their genetic, their genes more diverse. They would become more, they would reduce their genetic diversity more and more throughout the years, right? I mean, as it went down the line. And so if God were giving these women the ability to do this, this would end their generation, which would be the opposite of be fruitful and multiply. And so the theory of a pregnancy that resulted from the woman's egg only, through her power to self-conceive and give birth to offspring that is unable to do the same, is ungodly. Embrace the idea of virgin birth exclusively, and your children will only ever be a fading echo of yourself. I hope this video helped someone. I hope somebody got some good information out of it, learned something new, maybe applied something from it, from their life. Sorry, the lighting was off there. I just realized it. But it is taking me majority of this day to get through this video, and I'm so glad I'm at the end here. Woo! Hopefully I'm able to edit this and get this up here soon, because this information needs to get out there. It's become quite unfortunate how much misleading information and just straight up lies and extortion has really come to light in the last couple of years about, and through the name cryptic pregnancy. Cryptic pregnancy has really gone for, you know, like I said, embrace the idea of a virgin birth exclusively, and your children will only ever be a fading echo of yourself. Even if women could self-conceive or impregnate themselves just by deciding that they are, even if this was possible, it would not be something that could continue on from generation to generation to generation, because the genes would just become less diverse, and literally people would have to suffer with defects that they wouldn't have to have suffered if their genes were more diverse. Do you understand? So it would just be a horrible, it would be a collapse in what we know as a society. So I hope this helps somebody. She is done. She said, "You are done with this video, mommy." Yes, you are. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are well. Say bye. Stay blessed, friends. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye. Ooh, I can't do this with 2 hands.